I want to show you 3 super short and super awesome flamenco intro ideas from 3 flamenco masters. Here they are in order of difficulty, starting with the least difficult. So like I said, these ideas are pretty short. They're all based on, each one of them, a single arpeggio for the most part. They've got a lot to offer us, I think, in terms of technique benefit, but also something to think about for music theory, especially as it applies to flamenco. Let's look at the first one from Moraito. If you like what I do here, subscribe. It'll make you go from this to this. Let's look at the first one. This is from Moraito, great flamenco, modern flamenco player, died a few years ago. He only released a couple of albums as far as I know, but some really great modern stuff and some awesome playing on those albums. And he had a thumb like mine. People always comment on my crazy thumb. I guess we were born that way. So this song is a waltz/bulerías, so it's written in 3/4 time. And we're in the key of what appears to be B minor if you were looking at it in the music as far as the key signature goes, but it's really F sharp Phrygian, right? So what you're going to see in all 3 of these flamenco intros is that every one of these intros is evoking a Phrygian sound or a Phrygian dominant sound. So we'll have a major chord with a flat 9 added to it, and sometimes a flat 7. It's a dominant 7th chord fundamentally is that chord. So if we were playing something like Malagueña in E Phrygian, you might be familiar with that. This is the same thing up 2 frets, but the open strings give us some different kind of colors. And the open G gives us that flat 9 I was talking about. So if we played an F sharp major chord here, we could say it's coming from the C form, but if you finger it like an actual open C chord, like you would way down here, move it up to the 7th position, now we have an F sharp chord, and it has the open G string, which is our flat 9, kind of a nasty but cool Spanish sound, and then the open E string is our flat 7, so it gives us the sound of, or it literally is, an F sharp 7 with a flat 9 on it. But look what happens here. We have a sharp 9, which is a very like bluesy chord. You hear that in Purple Haze. A more jazzy sounding altered dominant 7th chord that we don't typically hear in flamenco. You may have noticed at the beginning of this video when I played the examples, I had the capo on the 3rd fret for this song, but as I teach you how to play it, I'm not going to have a capo on because maybe you don't have one, and we don't have to reach up as high for this example. So that's the theory of it, that's what the chord is, but the challenge of this in the right hand mainly lies in what it gives us for the ring finger, what it demands of the ring finger. So we have this. So if you notice here, we're playing a not weird at all arpeggio, you could say, thumb, thumb, index, middle, ring. We could call that a forward arpeggio. And then we come back a little bit for what appears to almost be a double arpeggio, which would be this. Just going thumb, index, middle, ring, middle, index. But here we're going to go like this. See right there, my ring finger traveled from the 1st string to the 2nd string, so that is the test here. Can you play this arpeggio without moving your hand? Let your ring finger move on its own from the 1st string to the 2nd string, and we want to bring that note out nice and loud, and that's the instant that our pinky comes down to play that sharp 9 note. So it really is a double arpeggio, but it's interrupted by this kind of string switch that we have to do. When we get to the end of it, we're going to play a fuller example of this chord so that we can play all the strings. So we're putting the 5th in the bass. You may have seen a C chord like that before, and we do this. But he also knocks the guitar like that, which some people don't like to do. I hate to do it. Like that. Down with the index finger and see if you can get your knuckle to hit the wood at the same time. And then come up with your thumb, and then kill it. Or don't kill it. Or slide it down. This next one by Paco Peña is from a really great album. It's one of my favorite flamenco albums of all time. Real traditional stuff. It's called the Asahara Flamenco Recital, and this is a Soleá, which you may be familiar with. That's where we count to 12. This is just the intro of it, which is basically an F chord to an E chord, but we're going to play it up higher in a second. So a minute ago I said these are all based on one chord. This is actually based on an F chord or a D minor, as we'll see. We could really kind of see the relationship between D minor, these are relatives of each other, D minor and F major, and then we're going to go over here to an F chord. But if you remember what I was saying about all these songs, they evoke a Phrygian sound. If we add an F note to an E chord, we get that Phrygian sound built into the chord. Here's what we're going to do. a lot going on there. I love how this really has this mysterious sound, and we'll see why that is in a second. But it has this cascading kind of arpeggio pattern, which for the right hand could be pretty challenging. That's why I say this one is a little more difficult than the Moraito one. In the example earlier, he has a capo on the album on the 1st fret, but we're going to do it without a capo. Okay, line these 3 fingers up on the 10th fret, pinky on the high E string, ring finger, just stack them up, middle finger. We don't want to be like this because we're going to get muffled notes. We really want to turn like this. This would normally be a bad hand position if we weren't trying to play multiple fingers on the same fret. We want them all to be nice and close so that they're nice and clear. But here's where things get immediately on the 2nd note, they get hard. We're going to pull your pinky off to your index finger, which is a C note on the 8th fret like this. And with the right hand, we're doing a block with index, middle, and ring. And instead of playing them all at once, which you can do, we're going to roll them like that and then do the pull off. So this looks like a D minor chord, and it probably is. We could also argue that it's a F6 chord, and they're definitely related. In the next passage, though, of the song, which we're not going to do, he goes and plays the D string, so that tells me that he's thinking of that probably as a D minor chord. Okay, and if you add a B note to a D minor chord, look what you get. A major 6, and it sounds very jazzy. It's the same as playing a B minor 7 flat 5. Real mysterious sound, and that's what gives this intro that mysterious quality. Okay, we're rolling it, pull off, and stretch way out here. This is already a challenge. We're playing the 12th fret, a B note, but make sure that you don't, with your pinky, muffle the 1st string, because we still want to hear that C note. And then take your pinky off and play the next 2 strings. On your right hand, it's index and middle. And then we come down here, your pinky's going to play the 12th fret of the D string. At this moment, your 1st finger can come off and play this B. Here's that B note again, but an octave lower. And that was thumb, index. And then we go to an E chord, which we'll see in a moment. That's what I mean by cascading. We're kind of going this string to that one, to this one, to that one, to this one. So we're ultimately going in this direction, but we keep doubling back to that string. It's very cool. And then we play the outer strings. I did a thumb rest stroke there. People have trouble with that. A free stroke here, but a rest stroke here. And then play an E chord and do, this is called a ramate, the end of these soleil phrases on the 10. Go like this. So we're doing really what we did at the beginning. Doing another one of those here. It's a quick triplet. I like to add that flat 9 sometimes and to play an F instead. Sounds good and nasty. So that way. Or I just did a thumb stroke and a golpe at the same time. He doesn't do that on the album though. Okay, this last intro idea, this arpeggio from Vicente Amigo, is, I think, the hardest of all of them. You might agree or you might not, but he plays it so incredibly fast. I think that's what makes it even harder still. Just like the first 2 songs and so many flamenco songs, we get that Phrygian thing happening. But what you'll find in a lot of the modern flamenco stuff is that they harmonically are doing things in keys that we don't normally play on guitar. Like you so often see this key, E Phrygian or A Phrygian. And those are common guitar keys anyway. Anything that has a chord, the main chord being C, A, G, E, or D, which has very much to do with the cage system, those are keys that are guitar-friendly keys because it allows for more open strings. But check this out. What if we were in the key of B major? B major has 5 sharps. Okay, the relative minor of B major is G sharp minor. And if we start from there, we can do the Andalusian cadence, which goes like this. And then E flat, but in this key we should call it D sharp, would be our Phrygian chord, let's call it. So that's very weird, and that kind of loses the oomph of the key of E, I would say, because in E Phrygian, we have, you know, the lowest note on the guitar in standard tuning is that low E string. But look what we get here when we play a D sharp chord, and then we go up to E is now our flat 2 chord, the equivalent of F in the key of E. I hope I'm not confusing you. But if we play the open E string with this, we get the open E string is that flat 9 that I was talking about, which, like in the Moraito intro, the open G string was the flat 9, but now we have it as the open E string. So if we went down here and played a D sharp chord this way, That's the D form. See, it's just like a D chord, but we moved it up 1 fret. Take this ring finger off and we have a flat 9. Already it sounds sinister and weird, and that's what this chord is based on. And we're only talking about this chord, and if, sure enough, he's going to go to an E chord later on in the song. And so we have that sound of 2 major chords 1/2 step apart, which is kind of like the Phrygian essence. So for this D sharp chord, this is the root, D sharp. Here it is again. If we go down a whole step, we get a flat 7. And so it's very, very much like the Moraito intro where we had this chord, right? We had a flat 7 with a high E string, and then we had a flat 9. We're also getting all of those elements here, so there's a real similarity harmonically between those two songs. Okay, but now let's talk about the arpeggio. Very weird and very fast. Let's do it nice and slow. We are in 4/4 time. This is a tangos. Another weird thing, because normally we see tangos like this. But this song sounds nothing like that at all. It almost sounds like a rumba to me, but we're going like this. So at the very end, we end up on the chord that we started with, and we're going to do a downstroke with the thumb and do a golpe at the same time. Not easy. Okay, everything else, for the most part, until the very, very end, are continuous 16th notes. So we're going thumb, middle, index, ring. So already we have a staggered pattern, which is weird. Okay, then we're going to come back to this finger, but this is why this is such a great and hard exercise to do. Take your pinky off and play that flat 9 C sharp that I was talking about a minute ago. So this really is happening fast, and we have at a split second have to change that finger in the left hand as we come back on the arpeggio. See how I moved that pinky off? So for starters, that's a great little exercise just to begin with. Add another string, our index. Okay, now we're going to stick to a different pattern. What's also weird about this, there's so many elements that are happening here. It's not a static pattern. Like on the Moraito one, it wasn't easy. We had to change strings, but there was a uniformity to it in terms of like it's one arpeggio and then we keep doing it. But here we're going to, the arpeggio pattern you could say is just kind of not repeating. Like we're not going to play the open E string until many, many notes from now. So there's all this movement in the left hand, which in the Moraito one, we didn't have to do anything in the left hand except hold that chord. So that is a real challenge. Nice and slow, the whole thing. What makes this extra difficult, like I said, is how fast he plays it. But he also starts off really soft and then gets, over the course of that measure, gets louder and louder. We call that a crescendo. That actually, believe it or not, makes it a little bit easier because the less we have to grip the string and play it really loudly, I think the faster we can play in most cases. So we're going to start real soft and try to get louder. He's so quiet at the beginning, so much so that he leaves out, I think the next time, he leaves out that first note. Hey, if you're struggling with nylon string guitar, you should check out my course, The Ultimate Nylon String Guitar Guide. None of us really know, unless you have somebody teaching you, what the gaps in your knowledge are. If you take this course, it's going to help you from the ground up, make sure that you have all the tools at your disposal so you can play stuff like this. So those are 3 awesome flamenco intro ideas, all based on an arpeggio, all giving us that Phrygian essence. And if you want to learn more about that Phrygian thing, check out this video. People really like this one where I talk about how we can get instantly a Spanish sound by just adding one note, and I think you know what it is.